The girl in the plain white dress looked at Ding Songyan with a mixture of anticipation and concern. "If you are unwell, perhaps you should go home and rest first." I am in no hurry." Her voice was soft and sweet, very pleasant to hear. Ding Songyan laughed. "It's nothing serious. I have already been wandering outside Dangkong Temple for over 2 hours. It is only that I'm a bit slow with some brain fog. If I stumble over my words or lose the thread later on, I hope you will forgive me." He was laying the groundwork in advance. He had never told a story in public before and had no idea how it would go. As he said it, a quiet wistfulness came over him. Back in his school days, he had looked down on all of it, the social maneuvering, the careful networking of useful connections. He had believed that intelligence and a thorough grasp of things could solve any problem and earn any success on their own. Then reality had knocked him down, and he had put himself back together piece by piece, and now reading people, befriending the right ones, and keeping those relationships alive had become instinct. In the last year or two, with his business successful and his ambitions provisionally satisfied, he had increasingly found himself tired in body and spirit. He was not cut out for business. He had sometimes thought he would rather go back to the quiet of an academic life, researching something he genuinely loved with no scheming involved, spending his free time drinking and talking nonsense and playing games with a handful of close friends. What a life that would be! He also knew this was self-indulgence. Without a sizable fortune already behind him, research done for love rather than profit would have left him constantly anxious, unable to enjoy any of it. In the middle of these thoughts, Ding Songyan arrived at the empty pitch that was his. No chair, no stool, no props of any kind. He gathered his thoughts and began to consider which story to tell. His gaze passed over the girl in the white dress and her maidservant in the green skirt, and an idea formed. He smiled slightly. "Dear listeners, the story I bring you today is the legend of the white snake." Even as the words left his mouth, he was watching the girl, her maidservant, and the plaster seller nearby for any flicker of recognition at the title, to judge whether a similar story already existed in this world. Not that it mattered much either way. He had already laid the groundwork. This was a legend he had only recently learned, not one he had written himself. If anyone claimed it resembled something else, that would simply be a matter of creative adaptation. Beyond the inspiration he had drawn from the two women's clothing colors, he had chosen the legend of the white snake for a practical reason. The television serial had been on constantly during his childhood, and he had sat through it many times with his family. As an adult, he had watched every adaptation. He knew the story's skeleton well, and could still recall the key turning points. Improvising the detailed scenes and dialogue on the spot was roughly the same level of difficulty as painting a grand vision in front of investors with PowerPoint slides in hand. This was also one reason he was not particularly worried about anyone accusing him of borrowing someone else's material. Apart from the key plot points, everything else would have to be invented on the spot. No two versions could come out the same. Seeing the small audience around him register curious expressions, Ding Songyan exhaled quietly. At the very least, the legend of the white snake did not exist in Dingjiang Prefecture. When he had listened to romances and heroic sagas earlier, there had only been stories of celestial maidens descending to the mortal world and falling in love with men, not love and grievance between Yao and humans. The open ground here was relatively quiet. No gong and drum performers nearby, no martial demonstrators calling out for a crowd. This was by design. The market had arranged things so that the quieter, literary trade occupied one section, the loud and physical trade another, with a buffer of middle ground sellers in between, so neither disturbed the other. Standing in the open space, Ding Songyan felt very little of what might be called nerves. It felt, in a strange and disorienting way, exactly like bringing up a projector and opening his slides in front of investors. The familiar composure settled over him, as though he were in another life, one that had been for some time now. Having identified the girl with the upturned eyes and pointed chin as his most promising potential investor, Ding Songyan began slowly. In ancient times, in the southwestern lands, at the foot of Qingqing Mountain, there lived a small white snake. He set the tale in ancient times from the first line, to spare himself any awkward questions later about where Qingqing Mountain or West Lake or Jinshan Temple was. "I genuinely don't know. It's all from ancient times." He opened with the story of Su Xian's first incarnation, saving the little white snake's life. To fill out the details, having long since forgotten how the television drama had handled it, he stitched in a scene of his own invention. The near-frozen snake had been tucked inside Su Xian's clothing and warmed with body heat. From there, the white snake cultivated in her cave for 1,000 years, finally achieved enlightenment and took human form. Guided by a bodhisattva, she set out with Xiaoqing to find the reincarnated Su Xian to repay the kindness, so that the karmic debt between them might be settled. As he spoke, Ding Songyan kept an eye on the girl in the white dress. She was listening with absolute attention. Even her breathing had gone soft and quiet, her dark eyes bright and luminous without a hint of tears, yet somehow full of them. Good reception so far. The potential investor is engaged. Ding Songyan grew more confident. He felt that the shift from the lady by seeking Su Xian merely to repay a kindness to something deeper needed proper scenes to bridge it in order to outline the emotional shift. But he could not remember enough detail, so he quietly folded in a few episodes from his own romantic history. He reworked things he had done for an ex-girlfriend that had genuinely moved her and wove it into the story. First, a chance meeting at West Lake, where they sheltered from rain in the same boat. An umbrella was offered, and a name exchanged in parting. Then, Lady Bai claimed she had come to Linen to copy Buddhist sutras at a temple in fulfillment of a vow, but, being afraid of actually going herself, she could only excuse herself as unwell. Su Xian, pitying her frailty, went to the temple himself and spent many days copying the sutras on her behalf. And then, after much had passed between them, the two of them, one human and one Yao, both having developed feelings, went to pray at a great tree said to be powerful for matters of the heart. They found each other's eyes at exactly the same moment they looked up. At this point Ding Songyan decided to leave things there. If the goal was to build a connection with the girl over time, the worst thing he could do was finish too quickly. Why wrap it up in a day? A week would be the minimum, 2 weeks better still. Seeing each other every day until they became familiar faces to one another. And then if something came up and she had the means to help, she would be far more likely to help someone she knew than a stranger. The answer to that was obvious. For the closing, Ding Songyan felt the day's telling had gone a little too smoothly. The story had not offered enough twists and turns yet. He had already drawn several dozen listeners, but mostly through the novelty of his style and the freshness of the Human-Yao romance as a subject. If he let Su Xian and Lady Bai sail into marriage without incident today, the audience would have no particular reason to return tomorrow. With this in mind, and especially with the aim of giving the girl in the white dress a reason to return, Ding Songyan changed course. Before the wedding could take place, he brought Fa Hai into the fold, the monk pausing outside the inn where Lady Bai and Xiaoqing had once stayed, muttering to himself that he sensed Yao energy. He watched the concern spread simultaneously across the faces of his listeners and ended right there. As the saying goes, West Lake is lovely in March. Spring rain is like wine, the willows like smoke. Faded ones meet from afar. Unfaded ones cannot hold hands, even face to face one. If you wish to know what happens next, listen to the next installment. The girl in the white dress opened her mouth, the picture of reluctance. Of all the moments to stop, Ding Songyan looked around with quiet satisfaction and brought his hands together. I brought no props today, so there is no need for tips. If you enjoyed it, come back tomorrow. He had no intention of taking the girl's silver today. He wanted to leave a particular impression, but he could not single her out for it. Doing someone a favor out of nowhere, with no apparent reason, tended to put people on their guard rather than winning them over. So he extended the same treatment to everyone and collected nothing from anyone. Such modesty, Ding Songyan, a listener called out approvingly. The girl in the white dress, who had already been holding some money ready, had no choice but to let it go. She lingered as the crowd dispersed, then came forward with her maidservant when most of the others had gone. Ding Songyan, will that monk called Fa Hai find Lady Bai and Xiaoqing? He most certainly will not. If he discovers them this early, how am I supposed to keep making up the story? Let Lady Bai and Su Xian open a pharmacy in peace, love each other and have a child, or let Lady Bai and Xiaoqing use Yao magic to manage their troubles. None of the satisfying moments I need to plan along the way. Tomorrow I'll let the threat brush close and then pass, and save a proper crisis for the hook at the end. Ding Songyan smiled. Come back tomorrow and find out. The girl in the white dress puffed her cheeks. All right. She did not press further, but asked with genuine concern. Are you still unwell? I know several skilled physicians. You had better come back tomorrow. I am fine now. Ding Songyan's thoughts turned. The truth is, someone made an attempt on my life not long ago. I still do not know who, and the worry has been weighing on me. My mind has not been quite right since. That is why I did not dare come out to tell stories until today." He said it casually, without asking for anything. He only wanted to plant the fact in her mind. The girl's bright eyes lit up at once. She turned and exchanged a glance with her maidservant. Everything she was thinking was written plainly on her face. Finally, a chance to do something heroic. She cleared her throat and smiled at Ding Songyan. "Well, I know a little about fighting. If there is anything I can do to help, you can find me at the Tianyang Hall. Ask for. She stumbled slightly, glanced at her maidservant in the green skirt, and recovered her bright smile. "Ask for Xiaoqing." Ding Songyan could barely contain his delight. "Many thanks, heroine. I am deeply grateful." The girl's smile bloomed even wider. But not knowing quite what else to say, she waved it off, and as she turned to go her eye caught an old man selling candied hawthorn skewers nearby. She fished out some copper coins at once, bought 2, and held one out to Ding Songyan. "You wouldn't take silver today, but I can't listen for nothing. Half this skewer is yours. It's very sweet." She was already licking her own as she spoke, turning away with satisfaction before Ding Songyan could refuse. "She didn't even ask if I like candied hawthorn." Ding Songyan thought with some amusement. He bit one off anyway and chewed. It was close to midday now, and hunger was making itself felt in earnest. He thought it over. Ever since the blotchy-nosed man fled, nothing had happened. The most likely reason was that the area outside Dangkong Temple was heavily trafficked and closely watched from the towers. Whoever was behind this would not risk moving openly here. With this in mind, Ding Songyan left Dangkong Temple in the direction of the cheaper food stalls, making his intention obvious and keeping to the quieter, less traveled lanes. In less time than it took to drink a cup of tea, he turned into an alley with no one in it. Behind him, unmistakable footsteps sounded. Ding Songyan spun around. The man in the cloth headscarf was there again, the blotchy-nosed man. His face was a mixture of fury and fear. He glared at Ding Songyan. "Ding Songyan, why have you come back?" Adapted from Crossing Fate, the closing theme of the new legend of Madame Whitesnake. Hearing the blotchy-nosed man's challenge, Ding Songyan caught something that did not fit. "Why are you angry?" There should be no anger. According to his earlier reasoning, this man had seen someone who should be dead walking around alive again. That would explain shock, fear, or unease. But not fury. Surely you don't kill a man, and then get angry when his ghost comes back to haunt you? Was my guess wrong? With this doubt forming, Ding Songyan did not answer immediately. He simply watched the man in silence. When you cannot think of a good answer, say nothing. The blotchy-nosed man grew more agitated under the silence. "Hallmaster Chen offered you more than enough silver. Why have you come back? You could have waited until things settled down and then quietly sent for your family." "Hallmaster Chen? Who?" It sounds like someone who had paid the original Ding Songyan to disappear. The previous owner of this body really had gotten mixed up in something. Ding Songyan thought for a moment, then decided to bluff. He gave a cold laugh. "If I hadn't come back, I would already be dead with no one to bury me." The blotchy-nosed man blurted out. "Hallmaster Chen would never kill you, he wouldn't silence." His voice trailed off, growing quieter with each word, confidence draining visibly away. In the end he could not finish the thought. He changed the subject with forced bluster, turning the question back on Ding Songyan. "If you say Hallmaster Chen tried to harm you, why not report it to the authorities?" Ding Songyan, who knew nothing about the actual situation, offered no answer with practiced ease. He only smiled and asked in return, "Indeed. Why haven't I reported it?" The blotchy-nosed man's lips moved. It was a long time before he spoke again. "You already survived. Why not take the chance to disappear, change your name, start fresh somewhere far away? Why come back looking for death? Oh, so you also think reporting to the authorities is unlikely? Meaning whatever the original Ding Songyan got involved in cannot be brought into the open, cannot be known by the government or the local orthodox sections. And Hallmaster Chen genuinely might kill to keep it quiet. When I chose not to go to the authorities, it was only because I knew nothing about this world and could only follow my family's advice to seek help from the Zhen household. A lucky accident." Ding Songyan weighed his words and gave another cold laugh. "I came back because I don't have a coin to my name. Where else would I go?" The blotchy-nosed man was nearly speechless. "You are able-bodied and you can tell stories. You could find a meal anywhere. Why insist on coming back and dragging everyone down with you? Do you really think Hallmaster Chen won't act again? Are you planning to spend your entire life standing under the watchtowers? Look, Ding Songyan, how about this? I'll scrape together some more silver for you. Just leave Dingjiang Prefecture. Ding Songyan changed the subject, as though a thought had just occurred to him. You saw Hallmaster Chen just now. What did he say? With a matter this serious, the man before him would never have dared act on his own. He would have gone to Hallmaster Chen the instant he had something to report. The blotchy-nosed man's tone took on a threatening edge. Hallmaster Chen already knows you're back. Are you still not going to run? He sent me to see you because he finds your behavior strange. You haven't fled, but you haven't gone to him either. He can't work out what you're up to. I see. Ding Songyan nodded inwardly. Having drawn out this much, he decided it was time to show his hand. Of course my behavior is strange. Someone hit me in the head. I don't remember anything. He touched the side of his head as he spoke. Don't remember anything. The blotchy-nosed man froze. Then you. Ding Songyan gave him a perfectly composed smile. I knew someone had tried to kill me. I couldn't remember who. So I came out to Dangkong Temple to have a look around and see who might be feeling nervous. You. The man pointed at him, caught between shock and fury, unable to form words. He had been played. The timid, spineless Ding Songyan had bluffed the truth out of him. And yet it also explained perfectly what had been puzzling him. If Ding Songyan had powerful backing, he would have gone straight to Hallmaster Chen. If he had no backing at all, he would have fled. Instead, he was simply wandering around outside Dangkong Temple, doing neither. The contradictions had been maddening. Memory loss. Trying to piece together what had happened, trying to identify the hidden danger. It was the only explanation that fit. Ding Songyan took the chance to persuade him. Tell me what actually happened. If it truly is dangerous, I'm not above disappearing immediately. But if you don't tell me, I'll go to the authorities. I'll burn myself to the ground if that's what it takes to drag you and Hallmaster Chen down with me. The blotchy-nosed man studied Ding Songyan's face for a long time, then spoke with some reluctance. Fine. I'll make you understand why you can't stay here. Don't make up stories to fool me. I have ways of verifying. Ding Songyan threw out one more bluff, gambling that the man would not believe Ding Songyan's memory was truly a complete blank. The blotchy-nosed man suppressed his anger. What would be the point of lying? You aren't some stranger. You already knew all of this. And once you remember, you certainly won't be telling anyone, because that would only get you killed. Some days ago, you came to me saying you had a copy of the secret classic of mountains and seas to sell. Hallmaster Chen was very interested. He paid you a large sum of silver and told you to leave Dingjiang Prefecture and never speak of it to anyone. Secret classic of mountains and seas? Ding Songyan interrupted. I know the classic of mountains and seas. What is the secret classic of mountains and seas? The blotchy-nosed man looked at him. You don't even remember that? Ding Songyan shook his head, the picture of honest bewilderment. The blotchy-nosed man drew a breath, checked the alley in both directions, and lowered his voice. Every martial art in this world comes from one of two sources. Either it descends from the legacies left behind by the various celestial thearchs or certain lesser gods, or it was derived from the divine beasts and strange creatures described in the classic of mountains and seas. Even the ordinary classic of mountains and seas mentions things like eating this and it cures such and such illness, eating that and you can resist fire or ward off evil. According to the secret classic, many of those divine beasts grant you their powers and abilities upon consumption. You could become a god or immortal. Granted, after Emperor Zhuanqiu severed the connection between heaven and earth, these creatures grew weaker and fewer with passing ages. But if you were to encounter one and devour it, you could still ascend to the rank of Grandmaster in a single step. Feng Yining of the Five Saints sect swallowed a phoenix egg and became a Grandmaster the day she entered the Jianghu. Their sect already follows the phoenix lineage, so it was a perfect match. But I'm getting off track. The point is, after Emperor Zhuanqiu severed the connection, divine beasts gradually vanished. But the ancients who had consumed them used the changes in their bodies and the powers they had gained to create cultivation methods and martial techniques. Those became the foundations of most sects today, including the unorthodox ones. The secret classic is supposedly a copy derived from the emperor-annotated classic of mountains and seas, which was left behind by a celestial arch. That original, along with the mythical Kunlun itself, vanished long ago. But the secret classic similarly records the specific properties of each divine beast, and even contains annotations on the legacies of the celestial thearchs and gods themselves. Think about what that means. It exposes the deepest secrets of every major sect. If everyone had a copy, the fundamental mysteries of their supreme arts would be common knowledge. For nobodies like us, it's useless. But in the hands of someone with ambition, it means the possibility of targeted countermeasures ahead of time. Even setting aside martial rivalries entirely, owning the secret classic means that if you ever encounter a divine creature, you'll know which ones can be consumed and their effects. You won't have to stand by helplessly while the great sects claim everything. Ever since the Joseon dynasty replaced the Xia dynasty, the secret classic has been systematically destroyed by every sect. Each keeps only the portions relevant to itself, locked away in private. Anyone outside a major sect who is found with a copy will be hunted down without exception. They will die. So Ding Songyan, why haven't you run? So that's how martial arts evolved in this world. Most of it starts with eating divine beasts. No wonder Qing Yan said that at higher levels of cultivation, the body begins to manifest physical abnormalities, approaching the form of the corresponding creature. I recall the classic of mountains and seas mentioning the nine-tailed fox. The fox-tail Qing Yan described must have originated from that. A feeling of sudden clarity washed over Ding Songyan. He asked, puzzled, where did I get a copy of the secret classic of mountains and seas? The Joseon replacing Xia had to be thousands of years ago. In all that time, the secret classic existed only in fragments held by major sects and imperial vaults. How had one suddenly appeared in the hands of an ordinary storyteller? Surely the original Ding Songyan hadn't dug up some ancient tomb, right? A partner, then? And the one who killed the original Ding Songyan wasn't Hallmaster Chen at all, but the partner. The blotchy-nosed man glared at him. How would I know? You kept your mouth shut no matter how anyone asked. You never said where it came from. To keep word from getting out, Hallmaster Chen had no choice but to send you away from Dingjiang Prefecture. Are you certain the secret classic of mountains and seas was genuine? Ding Songyan asked, thinking it through. The blotchy-nosed man looked blank. Hallmaster Chen said it was real and complete. You wouldn't have had the nerve to deceive him, would you? And who would bother forging something like that? You underestimate con artists. But Hallmaster Chen apparently had a way to verify its authenticity. And he doesn't sound like a disciple of any major sect. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to hide it, wouldn't need to nervously send the original Ding Songyan away. Ding Songyan changed tack. Who exactly is Hallmaster Chen? The blotchy-nosed man saw someone pass the mouth of the alley and quickened his words. His name is Chen Yuliang. He's the hallmaster for the small boat gang in Dingjiang Prefecture. His official ranking is Profound Discerned, which is 987, in common terms 5th rank. Our small boat gang is a reasonably well-known organization in Ningzhou province. We're currently contesting certain river routes with the Four Waters Brotherhood. The Four Waters Brotherhood? Patriarch Zhen of the Zhen household is a grand elder of the Four Waters Brotherhood, a famous grandmaster. So this really does connect back to the Zhen family. Ding Songyan felt he was beginning to see the outline of the matter, but at the same time caught the scent of something far more tangled beneath. Could the original Ding Songyan's possession of the secret classic have been part of a larger scheme all along? I see. Ding Songyan gave a look of resolution. Then I truly shouldn't remain in Dingjiang Prefecture. Go to Hallmaster Chen and ask him to give me a bit more silver. I'll find an opportunity to leave on my own. Until then, I'll stay in the open. He wouldn't dare act under the watchtowers. The blotchy-nosed man visibly relaxed. Good, good. We can always negotiate something out of it. He added a few more admonitions, then turned and walked toward the mouth of the alley. Ding Songyan watched his retreating back, mind working rapidly. Master, you should be able to tail this man and find Chen Yuliang. But would Chen Yuliang have no precautions in place? My behavior has been too far out of the ordinary. If I were him, given what he knows right now, what would I do? I certainly wouldn't sit at home waiting for my subordinate to report back. There's too great a chance that trouble would follow him through the door. Either I would hide somewhere and watch from a distance as my man returned, then decide on the spot whether to step forward and deal with things, or simply abandon the small boat gang's operations in Dingjiang Prefecture and disappear. Or I would follow behind my own man, listening in secret, ready to act the moment I understood the situation. And in that case, if Master you were to follow this man to the small boat gang's base, I'll be left standing here alone. Wouldn't that make me very vulnerable right now? Killing someone in broad daylight is difficult, but doing something else might still be within reach. The thought sent a jolt through him. He spoke at once. Wait. The blotchy-nosed man half turned, looking back in confusion. Ding Songyan allowed a slight smile to show, his tone easy and conversational. "Tell me, where do you think Hallmaster Chen is right now?" The summer sun blazed amid the thin and few clouds. Ding Songyan stood in the narrow alley, barely wide enough for two men abreast, pretending to enjoy the draft blowing through. He had actually considered calling out directly to Hallmaster Chen, who might be observing or listening nearby. A simple "Hallmaster Chen, please come out and show yourself," had crossed his mind. But after ruminating over it repeatedly, he abandoned the idea. If Chun Yuliang truly was close by, that would amount to flushing him out, forcing him into the open. The situation would grow complicated. There was no telling whether it might push him to desperation. The watchtowers deterred men who still wanted an escape route. They did nothing to frighten someone who had already resolved to die trying. If things came to that, Ding Songyan would have to rely entirely on Master Yu's protection in the short term. And defending one person against a man with nothing to lose was far harder than simply killing someone. Now that he had a rough picture of the situation and a real hope of resolving the crisis, Ding Songyan was not willing to gamble with his own life. So he simply asked, in a conversational tone, where Hallmaster Chen might be right now. It was a signal to Master Yu, hidden somewhere nearby. Chen Yuliang might be close. He did not know whether Master Yu would think of this on his own. Since he did not know, he had to assume he would not. The blotchy-nosed man was baffled by the question. "At our small boat gang's headquarters, of course." Ding Songyan tried another angle. "What martial art does Hallmaster Chen practice?" This, too, was asked on Master Yu's behalf. As a member of a rival gang, Master Yu most likely already knew. But for safety's sake, Ding Songyan asked anyway. "Everyone knows that. Why are you asking?" "Black turtle art." The blotchy-nosed man still could not fathom what Ding Songyan was after. Ding Songyan pressed further. "Is Hallmaster Chen skilled at seeing or hearing over great distances?" The blotchy-nosed man blinked. "Hallmaster Chen can hear faint sounds from 200 feet away." As he said it, realization seemed to dawn on him as well. Hallmaster Chen might be right here. Almost simultaneously, Ding Songyan heard a faint disturbance from the alley mouth behind him, as though something had swept past. Then Master Yu appeared from somewhere, in his black cap and dark short jacket, his figure flickering past like a ghost. So fast! The thought had barely formed when the blotchy-nosed man snapped awake. Without even turning his body fully, he was already sprinting toward the other end of the alley. "Damn you, Ding Songyan! You had an ambush waiting." Ding Songyan still had questions to ask. Seeing that the blotchy-nosed man showed no sign of martial ability as he ran, he threw aside his candied hawthorn stick and gave chase. This kind of pursuit, involving no martial violence, would not concern the watchtowers. Not unless it caused a disturbance or drew in bystanders. The blotchy-nosed man's footsteps hammered against the ground as he reached the mouth of the alley, about to round a large tree with dense foliage and a spreading canopy, turning in another direction. Suddenly, a pair of bronze-dark hands shot out from behind the tree, seized the blotchy-nosed man's shoulders with unerring accuracy, and dragged him into the blind spot formed by the alley wall and the thick canopy. Ding Songyan, still inside the alley, had not noticed anyone hiding behind that tree. In a blink of an eye, before he could stop himself and already close behind, he heard a dull, heavy impact. Then the sound of bone breaking. He finally skidded to a halt and immediately turned, trying to put distance between himself and the tree. A gentleman does not stand beneath a crumbling wall. "Songyan! Songyan, it's me!" A familiar voice came from the blind spot behind the tree. "Eldest brother?" Ding Songyan stared. He caught a glimpse of Bull's face peeking out, just enough to give him a quick nod before withdrawing again. Those bell-round eyes were threaded with red veins. His thick beard and the skin of his face were speckled with drops of blood. Ding Songyan frowned, thought for a moment, then put on the look of a man with an urgent need to relieve himself, and in a few steps moved to a position beside the tree where he could see into the blind spot. He stood facing the alley wall, hands at his waist, and used the corner of his eye to look. The blotchy-nosed man lay there. His face looked as though it had been hit by a sledgehammer, completely caved in. The blood that had burst from the wound had sprayed across his own body and across Bull's face. He was no longer breathing. Bull wiped his fist, still flecked with bone fragments and flesh, on the dead man's clothing. He turned his head, scratched it, and said to Ding Songyan sheepishly, "Songyan, I lied to you this morning. Mother said Master Yu is only one man, and might not be enough to keep you safe. She told me not to go to the docks today, to follow you in secret instead." Ding Songyan nodded blankly, pointing at the blotchy-nosed man. "Dead? One punch and he died. Bull nodded earnestly. Those bell-round eyes held not a trace of fear or panic. He was as calm as if telling his younger brother that a meal at the docks was his treat. Ding Songyan's first instinct was to call the police. No, report it to the authorities. But his mind had gone blank. My own brother just killed someone? I only wanted to catch him. To ask about the details of the secret classic of mountains and seas transaction. Granted, this means one fewer hostile witness, and the dead man was a gang member. But I have always been a law-abiding citizen. Looking at Bull's perfectly untroubled expression, a thought struck him. Bull, this isn't the first time you've killed someone, is it? Bull thought carefully for a while. On the road to Dingjiang Prefecture. I killed a few. Ding Songyan's back turned rigid, and yet some part of him felt this was only natural. Earlier, when he had told Su Chang'an that the girl in the white dress could travel all the way to Dingjiang Prefecture, made no effort to conceal herself, and still carried that look of innocent naivety, she must either come from extraordinary wealth or possess formidable martial skill. At the time, he had drawn a parallel to his own family. Qingyan was no less beautiful than the girl in white. Their mother was also a striking woman. True, whenever they went out, they wore veiled hats and kept themselves well covered, and on the journey to Dingjiang Prefecture they would certainly have paid to travel with a large merchant convoy or shipping fleet for safety. But on a long road, the unexpected was never far away. A family of 5 with no special protection could very well attract the wrong kind of attention. Ding Songyan had originally assumed they had been lucky, or had found a particularly reliable convoy. Now he saw it was not that at all. His family had its own powerful protector. Any predators who slipped through the net had been dealt with by his elder brother. Bull, what martial art did you learn? Ding Songyan asked, almost out of habit. Bull turned his gaze back to the corpse with its caved-in face. His voice came out in a low rumble. I was born with divine strength. As he spoke, he reached up with his left hand and wiped the blood droplets from his face and beard. Then he brought his fingers to his mouth and began, slowly, to lick them clean. Ding Songyan stared, slack-jawed. Bull ran his hand over the blotchy-nosed man's ruined face, the corners of his mouth splitting into a grin, and shared something with his brother, Songyan. I really like killing people. Every hair on Ding Songyan's body stood on end. A chill seeped through him. Bull smacked his lips, looking genuinely regretful. But mother won't allow it. Before Ding Songyan could respond, the man crouching before the corpse turned his head, his expression eager to please. Songyan, mother shouldn't scold me or punish me because I was protecting you today, right? The corner of Ding Songyan's mouth twitched. For the sake of his own safety, he offered a vague reassurance. She probably won't. Last night, after learning the truth of his brother's origins, he had looked at their mother Lu Yuzao's attitude toward Bull and felt, inexplicably, that this was a big dog being looked down upon. Now he only wanted to slap himself. This was nothing but a savage tiger, held in check only by the chains of familial love. Outside Dankong Temple, Master Yu darted through the crowd with an agility that was almost simian, pursuing Chun Yuliang ahead of him. With every step, wind seemed to sweep past and carry him to a new position as though he had blinked through space. At some point, a subtle prickling sensation spread through his body. He understood. One of the watchtower sentries had taken aim at him. Since he had not yet crossed the line into martial violence, Master Yu did not slow down. The distance between himself and Chun Yuliang shrank steadily. If not for the dense crowds of this busy market, as a man whose martial art bore the name of Wind, he would have caught up long ago. Past Dankong Temple, Chun Yuliang suddenly ducked into a martial hall, cutting through a covered corridor, skirting the courtyard and the training ground, and with obvious familiarity reaching a small, empty building at the rear. Chun Yuliang stopped. He turned to face the doorway. He was in his 30s, dark-skinned, with a slightly protruding mouth, wearing clothes that resembled a waterman's tight-fitting garb. He watched Master Yu slow his approach, step by deliberate step, and cracked his neck with a smile. So the secret classic of mountains and seas was a trap set for our small boat gang. Master Yu is it. You've served Patriarch Jin for 10 years, and never once fought at full strength. You're not even listed in the Orchid rankings. I've been wanting to test you for a long time. Are you also at Profound Discerned, or something higher? Master Yu's expression was cold and dead. He said nothing. He took one step forward. Wind erupted. In an instant he had closed to within 10 feet of Chun Yuliang, and his palm was already cleaving through the air. Chun Yuliang had barely raised his hands to block when Master Yu's heel stamped and pivoted, wrenching his forward momentum into an impossible change of direction, ghosting around to the man's back. His left palm followed in a diagonal chop. Humph! Qin Yuliang showed no alarm. He sidestepped and took the blow on his shoulder. A dull thud. Master Yu's hand struck what felt like dead leather. In those slightly lifeless eyes of his, he saw it. The exposed skin of his enemy seemed to thicken in an instant, patterned with lines like the cracks in a tortoise shell. Hood, hood, hood. In the confined space of the small building, Master Yu moved with barely any restriction. His lower body drifted like duckweed, swaying and spinning in the wind, constantly changing position, driving his upper body to strike from every angle, palms and fists seeking what might be gaps in Qin Yuliang's defense. Qin Yuliang could not match Master Yu's speed. He could only plant himself in place and hold firm. Amid the rapid-fire percussion of blows, Master Yu glided to a new position. His left palm shot out ahead of Qin Yuliang's guard and chopped at the man's neck. Qin Yuliang's neck suddenly gave way, as though layers of leather were parting, swallowing Master Yu's left hand and trapping it there. His momentum died. A vicious grin spread across Qin Yuliang's mouth. He seized the opening, clenched his right fist, torqued his body halfway around, and drove it toward Master Yu's face. Master Yu's expression did not change. His right hand suddenly clawed forward. With that motion, the air before him solidified into wind-given substance, gust after gust, raking across Qin Yuliang's face as it twisted toward him like extensions of Master Yu's own fingers. The target was those eyes. Blood sprayed instantly. Qin Yuliang's mouth fell open in a scream. The howling wind that surged forward stuffed the sound back down his throat. His vision had gone completely black. A single phrase flared in his mind: 7 arts of wind seizure.